So matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. You know, everything around us, like air, water, food, clothes, rocks, and even your phone, is made of matter. Matter exists in different forms, and understanding it actually helps us explain the physical world. All matter is made up of tiny particles. These particles have certain basic characteristics. Particles of matter are very small, so tiny that, honestly, they cannot be seen with the naked eye. For example, if you dissolve a pinch of salt in a glass of water, it seems to just disappear. But it's actually mixed. The salt particles are just too small to see. Particles of matter have spaces between them. These spaces are known as interparticle spaces. For example, when you mix sugar and water, the sugar particles fill the empty spaces between the water particles. That's why the water doesn't overflow. Particles of matter are constantly moving. Particles are not still. They are always in motion, and this is known as kinetic energy. The higher the temperature, the faster the movement. For example, when you heat water, the particles move faster, which is why it starts boiling. So, particles of matter actually attract each other. There is a force of attraction between particles, and honestly, the strength of this force is what determines the state of matter, like whether it's a solid, a liquid, or a gas. In solids, the particles are, really tightly held together, while in gases, the attraction is super weak. Traditionally, matter is classified into 3 states. Solid. It means having a definite shape and volume. The particles are tightly packed and they just vibrate in their fixed positions. There's a high force of attraction, and the spaces between the particles are really very small. For example, ice, iron, or even wood. So, let's talk about liquids. Liquids have a definite volume, but no definite shape. They actually take the shape of the container they're in. The particles in a liquid are less tightly packed than in solids. There's a weaker force of attraction between them, and they have more kinetic energy compared to solids. Some common examples are water, milk, and oil. Now, moving on to gases. Gases have no definite shape or volume. They just occupy all the available space. The particles in a gas are really far apart and move freely. There's a very weak force of attraction, and honestly, the particles have very high kinetic energy. Examples of gases include oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. So here's a question: can matter change its state? Yes, matter can change from one state to another through a few different processes. Melting. That's when a solid turns into a liquid. Heat energy actually breaks the force of attraction between the solid particles. The melting point is the temperature at which a solid becomes a liquid. Freezing is when a liquid turns into a solid. Cooling removes energy, so the particles move slower and form a solid. Oh, and by the way, the freezing point is the same as the melting point. So, boiling or vaporization is when a liquid changes to a gas. When you heat a liquid, its particles gain energy and, escape as vapor. The boiling point is just the temperature at which a liquid actually becomes a gas. Condensation is the process where a gas turns back into a liquid. When you cool a gas, its kinetic energy reduces and it turns into a liquid. Sublimation is kind of interesting. It's when a solid changes directly into a gas and the other way around too. Some substances like camphor, naphthalene, and dry ice can do this. So, let's talk about the effect of change of temperature. When we add heat, it actually increases the kinetic energy of particles, and because of that, they start moving more freely. This is what helps in changing the state of matter. For example, if you add heat to ice, it turns into water. And if you add even more heat to water, it changes into steam. Now let's look at the effect of change of pressure. By increasing pressure and lowering temperature, gases can actually be converted into liquids. This is the principle that's used in things like LPG cylinders and aerosol cans. Evaporation is the process where a liquid turns into vapor at room temperature. It's actually happening around us all the time. So, let's talk about what affects evaporation. There are a few important factors. First, surface area. The more surface area there is, the faster evaporation happens. Next, temperature. When the temperature is higher, evaporation speeds up. Then, humidity. If the air has lower humidity, you'll notice evaporation is faster. And finally, wind speed. Higher wind speed also means faster evaporation. Here are some everyday examples of evaporation. Wet clothes dry faster on a windy day. Also, water in an earthen pot stays cool because of evaporation. So, evaporation actually causes cooling. As particles escape from the surface, they carry away heat energy with them. This leaves the remaining particles with lower average energy, which creates a cooling effect. For example, that's why sweating cools the body. Okay, let's go through some important definitions you need to know. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. The melting point is the temperature at which a solid turns into a liquid. The boiling point is the temperature at which a liquid becomes a gas. Sublimation is the direct change of state from solid to gas or vice versa. Latent heat is the heat energy required to change state without changing temperature. Latent heat of fusion is the heat required to convert a solid to a liquid. And latent heat of vaporization is the heat required to convert a liquid to a gas. Now, let's talk about latent heat. When matter changes its state, it absorbs or releases energy without any change in temperature. The latent heat of fusion, which is ice to water, equals 334 joules per gram. The latent heat of vaporization, which is water to steam, equals 2,260 joules per gram. Alright, quick summary. Matter is made of particles. These particles have space between them, they move, and they attract each other. Matter exists in three main states: solid, liquid, and gas. Changes of state happen because of temperature and pressure, and evaporation is actually a surface phenomenon and it causes cooling.